real tornado. But this kind of big screen action is all too real for the people of Fort Smith, Arkansas. The twister that hit them earlier this year was the genuine article. And what was perhaps most frightening of all was that the system they and you count on for protection from tornadoes didn't work. Why? Here's Lynn Cannon with a Dateline investigation.
Something horrible struck the town of Fort Smith, Arkansas on a sleepy Sunday night in April. It came from the skies with little warning. It terrorized a city of 71,000 people.
911 emergency.
When police dispatcher Tom Goins began his shift, it seemed like a typical springtime evening.
Oh, just your normal calls, barking dogs, loud music, family disturbances, stuff like that.
But what Goins and the town couldn't know is that time was running out. Shortly after 11 o'clock that night, the routine phone calls stopped and chaos began.
Fire alarm at the Cafe Santa Fe, number 5, 100 Harrison Avenue.
My neighbor's house has been blown away, and I just hollered at them. They're inside.
Oh my God! Look, it's doubling on the wall, and they got babies.
5-story building down on the ground.
When all those calls started coming in, then I knew something had happened.
Oh my God! Mom, look!
In the dark of night, no one sees what is hitting them, but they can hear it.
God bless. I don't know if you can hear this on the thing. You can hear the roar of it.
Then, a flash of lightning reveals the image of a monster. A massive black tornado in the middle of town. It roars across homes and businesses for 7 miles.
Oh.
And through it all, tornado sirens that could have warned people in town to take cover will never sound.
The twisting winds rip up trees and crumble entire buildings. They toss a semi-truck 20 feet into the air and slam it broadside into this building, caving in a section of the wall. When it was all over, 2 children lay dead, 1,000 homes destroyed, and a town left asking a single question: why?
Why did it pick their city? Why did it kill their children? And above all, city officials are asking why the National Weather Service failed to warn them in time. With the most sophisticated radar in the world, technology that usually spots tornadoes early, how could it happen here in the middle of Tornado Alley? Was there too much faith in technology? Was human intelligence ignored?
The fact is that for one reason or another, we were not notified.
City Administrator Strib Boynton was among the first to arrive on the scene that night.
My first impression when I drove down the avenue was, my God, the avenue's gone.
Like many here, Boynton claims the National Weather Service failed the people of Fort Smith.
Our entire tornado warning system relies upon being alerted by the Tulsa Weather Service of pending tornadoes. We did not receive the warning until the tornado was actually hitting us.
The Weather Service in Tulsa began tracking the storm 2 hours earlier. Steve Piltz coordinated the effort that night.
It showed characteristics of some rotation, but it was very obviously a very severe thunderstorm.
Piltz and his team of meteorologists rely on state-of-the-art Doppler radar to track the storm. It cost the Weather Service $500 million and more than 10 years to develop, and it provides amazingly detailed images, a powerful tool to predict tornadoes. Doppler is so good, the Weather Service cut back its field offices nationwide, putting more resources into its Doppler centers.
Oh, God.
By 8:57 p.m., images from Doppler convinced Piltz's team to issue the first tornado warning in southeast Oklahoma, 80 miles from Fort Smith. Half an hour later, a tornado forms. By 9:30, the storm is still tracking northeast. Piltz and his team issue another warning, again half an hour before the second tornado appears. The storm is now just 50 miles from Fort Smith. By 10:30, it is just 30 miles away. Police in Fort Smith receive the only phone call they will get from the Weather Service that night. But it's not from headquarters in Tulsa. It's from a local forecaster in Fort Smith.
But at this time, it's just about headed this way. This is a dangerous storm that is approaching, and there is a tornado watch, and we may have to issue a tornado warning.
Okay, appreciate it.
But there is no warning yet. You'll get it, of course, when there's a warning.
The voice is that of Warren Hadley, a 25-year Weather Service veteran. He is also watching the storm on his radar, a much less sophisticated and older model. Unlike his superiors in Tulsa, Hadley is in Fort Smith, directly in the path of the storm, and he is worried.
I thought that this was going to move through Fort Smith.
And did you think at that point it was a big storm?
I knew it was a big storm.
Did you potentially think it could do a lot of damage?
I knew it had the potential to have a tornado in it.
But even though he's closest to the storm, Hadley is powerless to issue a tornado warning. With Doppler, the new goal of the Weather Service is to issue warnings only from regional centers like Tulsa. So Hadley can only tell Tulsa what he sees. It's up to them to issue a warning from 88 miles away. By 10:33 p.m., the National Weather Service issues a tornado warning for northern Leflore County, including the town of Arcoma. That's critical because Arcoma isn't just close to Fort Smith, it's just across the street. That is Arcoma. This is Fort Smith. But the Weather Service doesn't warn Fort Smith for another 35 minutes.
If they are so close, how is it you could issue a tornado warning for Leflore County and not for Fort Smith at the same time?
The typical tornado lasts just a few minutes, and to suddenly blanket a bunch of counties because of that storm would not be effective, because then you end up with a lot of false alarms. You end up with a lot more warning out there than you need, and it'll be the cry wolf syndrome.
71,000 people, and you felt like you would have been crying wolf if you issued a tornado warning earlier?
No, if the data had suggested that we had a developing tornado there, that's what would have been issued.
It's now 10:54, and although an earlier tornado watch remains in effect, there's still no warning, and Piltz's Doppler radar has convinced him the storm is dying. But 14 minutes later, everything changes. His office suddenly issues a tornado warning for Fort Smith. But by then, the storm has knocked out power. A computer and a special hotline to the Tulsa Weather Service are both dead. Police never get the word. Tornado warning sirens never go off. Except for those in town who own special weather radios, the tornado hits without warning.
Traveling northeast.
They never got the warning, Steve, and the siren was never activated.
We can't deal with what happens on the other end. We put out the warning, and it goes out these different ways, and then it's up to the community to then to have developed the different ways to receive the warning and to activate their warning system.
That storm took out over 1,000 buildings, injured a lot of people, killed 2 people. And you're sitting here telling me you can't be responsible for what happens on the other end?
The National Weather Service issues the warning, it tracks the storms, it provides forecasts, outlooks, and watches, but then it comes down to the city to actually activate their siren system based on whatever criteria they set.
And that has been the official line of the Weather Service, which defended itself in a news conference a month after the storm.
I think the Weather Service worked pretty well in this particular storm. The people of Fort Smith, Arkansas, were not caught by surprise.
But that view was not shared by Warren Hadley, the forecaster who was no longer allowed to issue a warning.
I gave them the information that I had, and to this day, I don't know why that they did not issue a warning.
Hadley says his bosses asked him not to speak to Dateline because he tells a far different story.
Why he didn't issue it, I don't know.
Based on the information that you had and based on your experience, some 20 years in this area watching weather, should there have been a tornado warning issued at 10:45?
I would have issued a tornado warning.
Hadley says on the night of the storm, more than half an hour before the tornado hit Fort Smith, he called the Tulsa Weather Service to suggest just that.
I indicated to them that I thought that they should issue a warning. I said, I'm ready for a warning for northern Sebastian and Crawford County. That was the statement that I made.
That includes Fort Smith.
Right.
His words were, quote, I'm waiting for the tornado warning. And if he's telling the truth, why wasn't that warning heeded from him who's in Fort Smith?
And that's not a recommendation. It was an inquiry based on will you issue a tornado or a severe thunderstorm warning, and he was wanting to get that information in and provide any input that he had to the situation.
Warren Hadley told us that if he had the authority to issue a tornado warning, he would have done so 20 minutes before you issued yours.
Well, and that's Warren being a trained, experienced National Weather Service person. That's something that I would say if he says it, that's true.
Why didn't you take the initiative call the police dispatch in Fort Smith and say, sound the alarm, it is my judgment that we're in trouble?
Because I don't have that authority. That would be like you doing it. That is not my job.
In fact, Hadley is right. Forecasters closest to the storm, sometimes with years of experience, may no longer have the power to issue tornado warnings on their own. The Weather Service has stripped 112 offices around the country of all or part of their authority to issue tornado warnings because they are now covered by Doppler. Doppler is the best technology out there, but it can only see so far. The National Research Council, an independent group of scientists, cited coverage gaps in parts of 5 states. And 6 months before the tornado hit Fort Smith, the Weather Service itself found the area may receive poorer severe weather warning services because it is too far on the fringe of Tulsa's Doppler radar. Piltz says Doppler radar did its job that night.
The radar data that was collected seemed to be consistent with what we'd expect for that type of storm.
The Weather Service has no plans to restore power to issue warnings to people like Warren Hadley, but it is planning to put a Doppler system in Fort Smith sometime next year or the year after. Still, people in Fort Smith aren't convinced that Doppler alone will protect them. The deaths of 2 small children and dozens of injuries around town will remind them for a long time just how vulnerable they are.
I feel very, very bad about the fact that the National Weather Service did not issue a warning for Fort Smith earlier than it did. The people in this area are not happy. They have a right not to be happy. I live here and I work for the Weather Service, but I can't say that I'm happy either. And the questions that you've asked, I'll be trying to answer them a long time.
A Weather Service survey team has begun planning for a Doppler site somewhere near Fort Smith. In the meantime, the city is still cleaning up, but it's expected to take 3 or 4 years before Fort Smith is back to normal.